We'll be back from the break. Here is Karibu, East Africa. Habari ya leo, East Africa. How are you doing? And now, when you look at what is coming in from the East African Community region, there is a lot of business happening within that. And we head to the east of it, that is with Kenya. As painful Kenya's taxpayer has risen, now this time around, as the debt is rising. Now, the external debt onto the mounting pressure for Kenyans has risen to 24.4 billion US dollars. The Kenya's dollar-denominated debt hit 69.3% of the country's external debt in the month of October. This exposed the taxpayers within the country to higher financing costs during the sharp depreciation of the shilling against the US currency. Now, this translates to 3.02 trillion Kenyan shillings. That is approximately 24.4 billion of Kenya's external debt, if you are to continuously look at that and how the flow of this particular one does happen. Now, besides that, also in Kenya, now we head to Kenya Airways. Huge one in here, as President Ruto has met with Delta Air, and he apparently wants to sell all stake in Kenya Airways. Now, the Kenya's President William Ruto met top executives of Delta Airlines in his American trip, where he launched the government's bid to sell its entire 48.9% stake in Kenya Airways. The president held a meeting with executives from Delta Airlines Incorporation, the largest U.S. carrier by market value, and he did so during the U.S. Africa summit. He declined to provide details of the talks, as Kenya seeks a cash-flushed foreign airline as a strategic investor in the national carrier to offer expertise and cut its reliance on Treasury handouts for Operation Cash. The United States President Joe Biden last week hosted the U.S. African Summit and will discuss the 2023 elections and democracy in the continent with about 50 African heads of state. Now, over 300 American and African companies met with heads of different delegations to talk about investments in critical sectors. That is according to what the White House did reveal. Now, in 2009, the airline holds plans to launch 4 direct flights a week between Nairobi and Atlanta via Dakar after the U.S. Transportation Security Administration failed to clear the new route, citing and noting security vulnerabilities in and around Nairobi. Now, this saw Kenya summon the then U.S. ambassador to explain the last-minute cancellation of the new Delta Airlines flight on security fears. The government in 1995 sold a 26% stake in Kenya Airways to Dutch airline KLM and sold a further 22% stake to local shareholders through an initial public offering at the Nairobi Bourse in 1996. The deal offered KLM seats on the Kenya Airways board, the right to appoint certain executives, in particular the CFO, and act as the technical partner of the national carrier. Now, KLM has reduced its stake from 36.7% after the conversion of state debt and bank loans to equity diluted the firm's ownership to 7.76%. The multinational had expressed its desire to exit Kenya Airways when the government opted to nationalize the airline. In 2021, Kenya Airways agreed with Air France KLM to end a code share for Africa's Europe routes. The national carrier has received multi-billion shilling state bailouts amid delayed recovery from a travel slump following COVID-19. Now, the fresh restructuring plan comes after the state dropped the favorable long-term solution that was anchored on nationalization of the airline in Kenya Airways. So, as you can see from the situation regarding Kenya Airways as of now, the airlines is steadily still having challenges with recovering from the shocks and the slumps of COVID-19. Well, besides the fact that before COVID-19, you get to as well realize the airline was as well on a drop of collapsing during that time. And of course, the government was working hand in hand with some of the stakeholders, quite a number of shareholders within the Kenya Airways KQ to ensure that they pave way for a possibility of the survival of one of Africa's greatest airlines in Kenya Airways. Now, President William Ruto, on the other hand, is meeting possible stakeholders within the sector to actually sell off stake of in the Kenya Airways to ensure that maybe in the long run it will be easier for them to at least stay in business. The president wants to sell off the state stake in the Kenya Airways to at least ensure that the airline remains active and pretty much not risk it all to the loss of quite a number of money that has been lost during this entire time of the challenges with the Kenya Airways. Do you remember also the pilots of the Kenya Airways had apparently went on strike in November. So these are some of the things that the president is looking forward to putting an end to. Now, away from Kenya, we head to Tanzania, as Tanzania has been given 300 million US dollars extra for the financing of rural water supply. That is up to 10 million Tanzanian citizens who are set to gain access to improved water supply, and 9 million to better sanitation facilities through additional financing by the World Bank on a project that is set to ensure rural water supply safe. Rural water supply. Now, a new 300 million US dollars World Bank International Development Association credit and 4.9 million US dollar energy sector management assistance program grant for the sustainable expansion and rural water supply and sanitation program will support this program expansion from 86 districts councils in 17 regions to 137 district councils in 25 regions of the country. Now, this will as well enable up to 1,850 public primary schools and 2,600 healthcare facilities to be reached with improved sanitation and hygiene facilities. Now, this set funding will apparently support a pilot of 206 water schemes that will be built under public-private arrangements. The original credit of 350 million US dollars was approved in June 2018 with the objective of increasing access to rural water supply and sanitation services in participating districts, as well as strengthening the capacity of sector institutions to sustain service delivery. Program implementation in this one did begin in 2019 by supporting the establishment of the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Agency as specialized rural water services delivery agency, which is as well mandated to ensure the sustainability of services. Now, the implementation is led by the Ministry of Water in close coordination with the Rural Water Supply and Sanitation Agency. Now, the Ministry of Education, Science and Technology, as well as the Ministry of Health and the President's Office, Regional Administration, and the local government, both working hand in hand to ensure that this is a viable venture and heavily executed. Well, now, lastly, I start to the Rwandan Patriotic Front, that is the RPF. Now, the youth under this particular youth league have been tipped on being innovative while upholding Rwandan values. Now, while thriving to make innovations that bring development within Rwanda, the youth have been advised to uphold Rwandan principles and values. This call was made during Rwanda Patriotic Front Youth League meeting that took place at the party headquarters in the entire conference. Now, the meeting that convened more than 2,000 young members from different parts of the country was also attended by senior party cadres, including commissioners and the Secretary General Francois Ngarambe. Now, Christopher Bazivamo, the Rwanda Patriotic Front Vice Chairperson, reminded the youth that they have a great role to play in the development of the country by building on what has already been achieved, as well as spearheading innovations that serve society. Another issue that was highlighted is the promotion of products made in Rwanda. Now, industries definitely need markets, and of which the markets that they basically need are markets within Rwanda first, before they look at the markets out of the country or externally. And you can play your part by buying and promoting products that are domestically manufactured rather than importing goods from other countries. That is according to what the young people in Rwanda were reminded. So in the long run, it's just basically to remind Rwandese youth that it's important for them to think about how they will definitely engage themselves in activities that will definitely help them grow from not only benefiting from from what is apparently available or what the government has so far done for them, but also to engage in different activities that will strengthen Rwanda's economy. So that is exactly what the Rwandese have been reminded. Of course, the world of innovation is something that is already shaping up the East African Community region, and especially the fact that it's being championed by the young people, all these particular young children. And of course, look at the young children mentioning of some of the innovations coming in from elementary school, primary, then you move on to secondary school where the teenagers are also coming up with high innovation skills. And then at universities and tertiary institutions, whereby we've got some of the young people who are only looking for startup capital or support to push for their development and their various innovation ideas. So that is why the Rwanda Patriotic Front has reminded the young people or the youth in Rwanda to basically focus on innovation, but around the innovation, they should be carrying the Rwanda values with them. That is the Rwanda spirit with them as they push forward to ensure that innovation takes center stage and also to develop Rwanda's economy. So speaking of Rwanda's values is to make sure that they maintain the idea of buying Rwandese products before they actually tap into those which are imported into the country. So that's it for Karibu East Africa this morning. Now let's head to the SMB International Updates. The international updates, we head north of Africa and to the east, stretching to the Horn of Africa with Ethiopia. Now, the details coming in from Ethiopia regarding the fact that the Trade Bureau has apparently revealed that Addis Ababa has been hit by sugar shortage. This one is particularly alarming as the ministry has pledged to overcome the supply problem of sugar. Now, the Addis Ababa City Administration Trade Bureau announced that the capital city has been hit by severe shortage in the supply of sugar products within the city. 200,000 tons of sugar is expected to arrive in Ethiopia between the 24th of December 2022 and 8th January 2023. That is through the Sugar Corporation. Now, the current shortage of sugar production will also be fixed after 8th January, according to more information coming in from there. Now, in February this very year, Fincha Sugar Factory, which is one of the biggest sugar factories in Ethiopia, which is located in Horoguduru Wolenga zone of Oromia Regional State, was forced to apparently stop production for a week because truck drivers refused to travel to the area due to safety concerns resting in the fuel shortage, according to the Ethiopian Sugar Corporation. Now, the factory, which has the capacity to produce 2.7 million quintals of sugar and 20 million liters of ethanol annually, resumed production after a week, but the security crisis in the area has apparently gotten worse. Now, the government announced in November 2019 that it was in the process of conducting evaluations, including technical and social impact assessments and validation of factories, covering all 13 projects which are in Ethiopia, with plans to privatize 6 of the 13 in the first quarter of 2020. But there has also been no progress so far, and sugar shortage keep recurring frequently within Ethiopia. So with the sugar shortage, you as well expect sugar to also increase, or the sugar prices to as well increase in there for those who are actually consuming sugar in Ethiopia, for especially now targeting the hotel industry and also the consumption at the family level. So that is it from Ethiopia this particular morning in regarding to sugar. Of course, sugar shortage have hit the capital of Addis Ababa, according to reports. But of course, the ministry is apparently working hand in hand with stakeholders to ensure that this does not happen. And there are lots of tons of sugar that is highly expected to come into Ethiopia from the 24th of December 2022 and the 8th of January 2023. So I pretty much think for the sugar companies in Uganda that look at exportation, those in Kenya, those in Tanzania, Ethiopia is now providing a market for you at this particular morning. It's time for us to head into the embassy to talk to the different delegates from the Ethiopian country to see how best we can tap into these ones and export more sugar to those particular regions in Ethiopia. Now, away from Ethiopia, we look at the International Finance Corporation, which has apparently come out to see huge potential to boost investment within Africa. Now, the World Bank's private investment arm sees huge potential to boost investment on the continent and help support entrepreneurship and digital transformation on the continent. Now, the top officials with the International Finance Corp, that is International Finance Corporation, IFC, revealed. Now, the US President Joe Biden hosted a 3-day summit attended by 45 African national leaders last week that was aimed at bolstering trade ties between the United States and Africa after years of inroads by rival and economic powerhouse China. Now, the International Finance Corporation Managing Director Martha Diop told the Reuters that IFC was working with African countries to help match up entrepreneurs with urgently needed financing to support economic growth and job creation across the continent. The goal, he said, was to apparently develop homegrown innovative solutions for Africa that could also be exported to the rest of the world, as well as support for African entrepreneurship and digital transformation being looked at as an essential to economic growth. Now, also besides that particular one, they look at job creation, the resilience of the continent and beyond. And IFC's Global Director of Disruptive Technology, William Sonborn, did reveal that not only job creation as well as resilience of the continent and beyond, but they are also looking at transforming the essentials that will lead to economic growth across the continent. Now, also on the other hand, with a population of 1.4 billion under the age of 18, this is home to some of the fastest growing economies in the world, and Africa as a continent is steadily promising. That is why when you look at the economic powerhouse of China, the United States are all tapping into this one, Russia inclusive, to see how they can explore the African continent with different innovative ideas, different financial support, giving up credit financing, and as well to ensure that those young people within the continent do stand a better position to at least compete favorably in the future space on the continent, and also to position themselves so ably well in the world of innovation. Now, lastly, from the S&P International News, this particular morning, we look at Ghana, as now Ghana suspends payment of part of its foreign debt, including the Eurobonds. Now, Ghana's economy is one that has actually been in the headlines across the world of business this very year. If you look at the scope of the business news across the African continent, Ghana now temporarily suspended the payment of part of its external debt, including Eurobonds, as it seeks to restructure it after an agreement with the International Monetary Fund last week. The measure aims to prevent a further deterioration of the economic, financial, and social situation of Ghana, as it was revealed. With historic inflation of more than 50%, the collapse of the local currency by 50%, prices at the pump that have doubled, and the debt whose repayment follows half of the state revenue, Ghana is grappling with a serious economic crisis. It's the worst in decades. Excluded from this suspension are the payment of multilateral debt and new debts contracted as of Monday. Now, until a few years ago, Ghana was held up as an example in Africa for its high growth rates, rising oil production, and strong investor interest. But like much of the African continent, Ghana struggled to recover from the downturn caused by the global COVID-19 pandemic before being hit hard by the economic fallout from the war in Ukraine. Now, so last week, the government signed a $3 billion bailout agreement with the International Monetary Fund to shore up public finances. The agreement includes a debt restructuring that needs to steadily be recognized. Now, many Ghanaians fear that the deal will force the government to impose further austerity measures that will further burden the population in there. So apparently, these are some of the things that we steadily need to look at to ensure that we favorably come together to push towards the African perspective. But the narrative in Ghana, on the other hand, is looking at how Ghana's economy is steadily facing some huge hiccups, I could call them. This has made it quite difficult. The other time, the finance minister was being threatened to resign from office. Then also, on the other hand, putting pressure onto the president. The Ghanaian government is still struggling to ensure that they contain not only the inflation levels, but they have a lot of pressure to meet different outcomes that are coming in left, right, and center. So that is it for the S&P International News this morning. But besides that, let's now look at the press review to see what is coming in from print media this particular morning as you prepare yourself to at least kickstart off your business day. The print media has something to do with business, and now let's roughly go through it this morning as well. All right, now the Daily Monitor says government tightens fight against land fraud. Is the headline this morning, as the Ministry of Lands, Housing and Urban Development is in a move to check fraud and forgery of land titles, and they've apparently published details of thousands of titles across the country whose owners are seeking replacement. Then also, is you can see what is coming in from here is that there's also in brief news, snake has there's something to do with the snake bites Entebbe International Airport staff on duty. This is another one that calls in for ready for that, just to at least look at some of the social factors that we should be worried about. Then also in the Prosper magazine, men working in spaces once ruled by women. This is a magazine that is actually showing a pictorial of men working in salons. Then also Christmas, as Christmas is taking center stage, Fika Salama Drive is back on the roads, according to the Daily Monitor. How about that? You will see more of that situation this morning as well from the Daily Monitor. Now, with the East African, President Kagame backs China loans as United States woes Africa. He's, according to President Kagame, says Africa must be led to choose from whom to borrow, but cautioned against falling into the debt trap by most of these particular world economic powers. Then also the East African has highlighted funding crisis. Juba, Burundi, or East African community $40 million as the regional legislators say default on remittances is stalling the bloc's important projects. Then lastly, from the press review here with the new vision, as the NSSF as minister summons board and former MD Richard Biarugaba, the workers want contracts, procurement committees have been probed. That is a report regarding National Social Security Fund. Also, there is a report regarding Uganda and United States firm which have signed huge trade deals following the US-Africa summit that concluded over last week. So that is it for the press review this morning, as well as you kickstart off your business day. Now, that is it for this hour of Smart Means Business with just 5 minutes to go to the top of the hour. When I do return, I've got the business tip, court, social media trends, and of course, more business updates this morning. You better stick around for this hour, which has also got more information regarding the SMB sports business as well as entertainment business. So keep your eyes here on your daily Kickstarter as we kickstart off your day with business information as it's supposed to be. Good morning.
Smart 24, driving business.